Hi everyone, I'm Leo Vieira. I'm the Extension Soil Fertility Specialist with the LSU AgCenter. And as we get close to the end of our growing season and we finish our harvest, it will soon be time to think about our next growing season. For that plan, one of the first things that should come into our mind is to evaluate the fertility of our soil. And how we do that? Well, for that, we have to soil test. We can't guess. But again, why soil test? Well, soil test is it's likely the best investment in terms of return, because you can focus on what's really missing on your soil. A soil test report is pretty much like a report card for your field. It's going to show the strengths and the weakness of your field. And remember the law of minimum, because your yield is going to be limited by the scarcest nutrient, not the total nutrients available. So it's very important to focus on what is limiting your yield. For example, let's say you have been applying year after year nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and then, like in this example, and you take a look, your phosphorus is at optimum level. So maybe next year you can focus on sulfur in this example, that's at a low level. And then with that, you'll be able maybe to allocate the same amount of money that you did last year, but still bump up your yield potential. When we think about soil test, we normally think, which lab should we send my sample? Which is the best lab? But as long as it is aligned with the recommendations of your state, most of the labs, they have personnel that have been extensively trained. So the most important part of your soil test report to generate a good soil test report is a good soil sample. Your soil test report will be just as good as the sample you send in. And because of that, I would like to talk about 6 points on things that you should think about when doing soil sampling. The very first thing is sampling at the proper depth. You should sample at 6 inches deep in the soil. If you do a shallower sample, you'll be inflating the results on your soil test report. You'll be overestimating the fertility of your soil, because the topsoil normally has a higher content of nutrients and organic matter that will show higher values on your soil test report that are not really what's going on over there. Another point is where to sample in the row. You should not sample at the crop row, but 6 inches away would be ideal. A third point that we should consider when doing a soil sample is how many cords we take per area. So when you split your field in an area and you do a composite sample over there, you should take between 10, ideally 20 cords per area to form a composite soil sample. And that will, the more samples you have in each composite, the highest your chance to really see what's going on your field. The fourth point is not have a too large area per sample, per composite sample. I wouldn't go over 10 acres, because it's expected already at 10 acres you see some discrepancy within the land. So, and if you see difference in soil color, soil texture, slope, or even crop management that you do, crop yield, I would split the area to have a better chance to focus on what's missing on that area. The fifth point is, ideally we would do a soil sample every year, but if you decide to do every couple of years, please do at the same time of the year. If you do annually or biannually, because it's expected that there will be some fluctuation on soil nutrients in the soil, and if you do at the same time of the year, every time you do the soil sampling, you have a fair comparison between the soil test reports. So last but not least point that we should consider when soil sampling is to sample it ahead of time. Ideally, we could do it in the fall or early winter, because by doing at that time, we would have more time to plan our fertilization strategy for the coming growing season. In addition to that, we can send to our soil testing lab earlier. They will be likely less busy, and we will receive our soil test report faster. So that's pretty much a win-win. So after we did the sampling, we sent to our soil testing lab of our choice. The LSU AgCenter also has its own soil testing lab, if you would like to send it there. And after we receive the soil test report back, there is a reason why soil pH is in the very top. Is likely the most important part on that soil. In this case, our pH is 5.3. So in this case, we need to lime to increase the pH to the ideal range, which is at least 5.8, but between 5.8 and 6.5 would be ideal for corn. It's expected that over the years our pH should decrease because of the high nitrogen applications. However, don't lime without doing a soil test, because there are some exceptions to that rule. And one exception depends on your irrigation water. If your irrigation water is high in calcium carbonate equivalent, that water can have a liming effect and your pH can slowly go up. So, and if you lime without soil testing, you can make things worse, because with a high pH, you can have micronutrient deficiency. Even though we can have problems with low soil pH, like micronutrient toxicity, like for zinc and copper. On the other hand, at high pH, we can have deficiency. So it's very important to watch out for that. The next stop will be the nutrient that is a very low or medium range. In this case here, we see that our next stop would be potassium and sulfur that are at the medium and low range. Because by addressing the limiting nutrient, we will be avoiding the fertilization strategy one size fits all. And by doing like a customized fertilization plan, it's expected that our yield will go up and we will have a higher return on investment. One last point that I would like to mention that can also be considered soil fertility, but is still beyond the nutrients in the soil, is soil health. Especially for the areas that have low organic matter and you have seen low yields, it's important to consider conservational practices. I'm going to mention two of them. And the first one is cover crops. Cover crops are a good option because they can reduce the compaction of the soil. It will reduce erosion, runoff of nutrients, leaching of nutrients, and it also helps on aggregation of the soil, in addition to add some organic matter. Another conservational practice that I would consider is alternative nutrient sources that have organic matter. One example is chicken litter. Depending on where you are in Louisiana, it's worth to getting some of it, because chicken litter has all macronutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. And also it has some of the micronutrients, zinc and boron. Of course, it depends on the rate you apply, but that could add some considerable amount of nutrients and organic matter to your soil. If you have any questions regarding how to interpret a soil test report, or if you would like to adopt some of the best management practices that I mentioned, or conservational practices, please reach out to your local extension agent or to myself. I'm also available. And remember, a good sampling and strategizing your fertilization plan ahead of time will result in higher return on investment and a higher yield potential. And I wish you all a safe and productive harvest. Thank you all very much. for watching this.